What's going on, everybody? Hey, I got another interview style episode for you today. This time it is with David Carpenter. He's a youth pastor in Kentucky, and I came across David through social media, I think in like a youth pastor only or UIM type style Facebook group. He was talking and answering a question about social media. And so his answer intrigued me. I clicked on his profile and I saw that David is very much leaning into a digital and hybrid ministry experience in his church and in his student ministry. So I reached out and I scheduled an interview. And so without any further ado, I have the exclusive David Carpenter interview for you to check out here on the hybrid ministry episode. If you find this helpful in any way, I would love it if you would subscribe, like, and share it with a friend. But without any further ado, check this interview out between myself and David Carpenter. I'm here with David. David, what is up, man? How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I am recovering. We're in the middle of VBS week right now as we're recording this. So I'm sure if some of you all know how that goes, and we're kind of making it through, but it's a good time and it's a good week. So
now is we're doing like a VBS at night church or a VBS in the morning church?
Yeah, we're VBS at night.
Okay.
And I'm crazy youth pastor David, so I get stuck up on the stage and do crazy dances and jump around and the like. So that's kind of the rhythm. At least once a week in the summer. That we're in, but yeah, it's a good time.
Yep, we've all been there. We've all been there.
We've all been there.
Just that's part of the gig. It's how it goes. So, well, that's awesome, man. I'm excited that you guys are having a good week. I hope that you're getting at least some sleep, and I hope that your coffee this morning is strong, so that you can recover well from VBS.
It is.
But I came across David. I think in like a DYM or youth pastors only or something like that Facebook group, and someone had asked some sort of question about social media or something, and you replied. I have no idea what you said, but I started creeping on you and your profile, and I just saw a lot of different like videos and like shorts and reels and stuff like that, and it was more than I was used to for, I guess I'd say like the average or standard youth ministry social media that I saw. And so because of that caught my attention. And so I followed you and became friends with you or something on Facebook, reached out to you and chatted a little bit, but I'm excited to have you on here today because I'd love to know, what is like as it stands today, in your student ministry at your church, like what is your current sort of like social media or digital presence? What does it look like? What are you aiming for? And how's all that going?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking, and obviously honored to be here. And we connected on that question. And I started doing social media stuff when I was probably 14 or 15. My dad was a pastor, and obviously, I'm sure lots of pastors' kids out there know you get roped into doing things. And he was kind of an early innovator and had started doing a weekly YouTube show for our church. This was probably back in 2012, 2013, and I wanted to increase the views on it. Mm-hmm. So I created a Facebook page for it and kind of started to put together a logo for it and try to find ways to increase its viewership and things like that, and kind of got my feet wet doing video editing and social media stuff at that point. But in student ministry, we are looking at social media as an opportunity to disciple our students, but also as an outward opportunity to disciple, literally people across the world. Mm-hmm. And practically that looks like a couple different things. Platforms we use. We use YouTube. We put our regular weekly student ministry teachings on podcast form. We use TikTok, and we use Instagram, which is connected to a Facebook account. Our students don't engage there much, but we cross-share some of that stuff because I think it helps to keep parents connected. But kind of the shift and the mindset going into it for us is that opportunity for discipleship, that we are producing teachings and content that, it's kind of already done. Mm-hmm. And we have the opportunity to capture it and record it and then redisplay it to potentially an audience that was missing on a Wednesday night, or an audience that may never be able to come to our church. And so, kind of, probably about a year ago, we started thinking about ways for our church and our student ministry to really maximize digital, opportunities to reach people and disciple people. And over the last year, we've been kind of rolling that out and stepping into that over time, because we want to make sure that we can do it in sustainable and continuous ways. But it's really just it's an opportunity for discipleship, and for us to tell the story of our church, for us to tell the story of our student ministry. People love stories. And when we have the opportunity to share the stories of what Jesus is doing in the lives of our students, or just even ways that our students are connecting and enjoying their teenage years in a healthy Christian community, we feel like that's a win. So
Yeah, no doubt. The most recent episodes that I had our like year-long resident on here, and it was interesting because he mentioned the value that like our social media sort of like presence and just philosophy and strategy, the value that it brought to like our attendance and our students that are actually like in the room, right? Because a lot of times I think it's like we view it as like a replacement for the kids that were not at church, or for the kids that aren't even there yet. But he was like, no, I thought it enhanced like the experience for the kids that are already there, which was like an interesting, like I'd seen it too, but I hadn't come to that sort of like conclusion like he had. And so because I do think the argument a lot of times that I feel like either we face as youth pastors, or even just like me with this podcast, is just that there's not enough time and we need to focus on the kids that we have. And so to hear you say like this is an opportunity, this is a way for us to lean in with the kids that we have, like that, I would agree with that. And so get specific here, like help us out, help people out. Like, what exactly do you do? Like, what camera do you use? What like software are you using to edit? Like, because you're a real youth pastor with a real job, with real responsibilities, with real messages to write and programs to create. But like, how are you involving digital media into that, and like, what's your workflow with all that? Because it feels like it would probably be a steep learning curve, or just a lot of extra work. And maybe it is, but like, what are you doing? What's helping you out? What are some shortcuts maybe that might be out there?
yeah, well, first, I think what you said is completely true. That it is an outward facing thing, but also, one, I think sometimes we as preachers assume that people come and listen to us. I speak to our students on Wednesday nights for about 18 to 22 minutes. Sunday morning is 28 to 32 minutes. And we think they probably remember everything we said, right? Like they wrote the notes, they've got it, and they've already applied every one of these points. It was alliterated, and remember my great illustration. And when we're including things that are reflecting on the teachings, I think that reinforces and reminds those who were in the room. And also things like we did a post on our social that did really well a few months ago of a picture of a student taking notes. And the post was overlaid on the photo of the student was the notes from Wednesday night, some of the notes that we had given them. And then in the caption was information about why do we encourage students to take notes? Why do we give out handouts? And you have an opportunity to teach culture in those moments. So it definitely is for the kids in the room too. But practically speaking, we from August to May, we regularly gather for student nights. Our church takes the month of June off, and then we come back in July with some different programming on Wednesday nights. But for those student nights, we capture those. I capture those from our soundboard straight into GarageBand. It's nothing fancy. I think if you listen to podcasts, you're probably smart enough to go get I think it was an $8 adapter that is a board out to a USB-C in, and I just record the audio of the speaking. And we do podcasts for the reason of number one demographic for podcast listeners is like 12 to 22, I heard somewhere. And so our students and student age people are listening to podcasts. And also I use those as a resource for our parents. I always encourage our parents to stay connected. If you listen to podcasts as a parent, hey, you can listen to what your student is learning and stay engaged and connected to our students in that way. So we have audio in that way. And then we, as a message is beginning, our church is not a very big church. We're in a more rural area. We're about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour south of Lexington, Kentucky. And so we have a Canon M100, which is not a super nice camera. It's an outdated model. I think the M200 came out a couple years ago. So this is a post, model camera. And we set it on a tripod high enough that it's pretty well over the student's head. And we record those and get a long form video of the message. And that goes on YouTube. And that again, the primary purpose of that is for our parents to have a way to connect. I don't have any visions of those, going viral or making me famous. It's, we're getting 2 to 6, 8 views on those videos. But it's so that we have a digital record of it. And then those get split into, my goal is always 2 short form clips that go on TikTok and Instagram. And if you can get them short enough, YouTube shorts a week, as a way to reiterate, there's a word in there somewhere. I apologize.
Reiterate?
There you go. That's the one. Our teachings on Wednesday night, to connect back with those students, and obviously to disciple people who, they may be near to you, but are far from God or need encouragement in their faith. So that's pretty practical. I use Premiere Pro. I've always used Adobe products. But what we do, I feel you could get a YouTube video of your teachings. You could use a phone and a digital recorded mic, like a phone-in USB-C mic, especially if you've got a late, new model phone. If you're not in a large space, as your space gets larger, it's the lens being able to zoom in on the space that you're in. But it's not fancy technology. The church has invested $10 in an adapter to record the audio, and that was we got better quality from the board straight into a laptop. So that's kind of we build out from there, because we can stay consistent with that, especially through the school year. The other things we're doing is we show up with a camera to everything we do. I use a Canon. I'm sitting here looking at it. I think it's let me look. Let me tell you before I lie to you. It's a 70D. I couldn't remember if it was a 70D or an 80D. But with a 70 to 200 lens, I am not a photographer. About 2.5 years ago, I started taking pictures, and I've gotten better over time. You can put that thing in auto, and if you take enough pictures, you can get a couple good ones.
Some of them will look good, right?
That's exactly right. If you can get a couple good ones in focus, and we have leaders now that, of course, like when I'm speaking or on stage leading a game or something, I can't get those pictures. I tell them, hey, this is how you focus it and do your best. And they always, I've got multiple leaders who can come out with a couple good pictures. Those are great to have for your YouTube thumbnails and Instagram Reels covers. And then also just having a photo library is helpful to stay consistent. That's one of the most important things I feel like with social and success in is consistency. And I think for people like us who work, a full-time job as a student pastor, youth pastor, that's probably the greatest challenge. So building rhythms into your regular weekly life to prioritize social is important. And I think that's kind of what you are in doing what you're doing, trying to encourage people towards, and something I would definitely amen with what you're doing to say is, hey, we are busy, but the 5-10 hours a week that it takes to, record and put a message on YouTube, cut it up into some clips, maybe find another way to post on social once a week elsewise, like it's worth it because you are connecting to your kids where they already are. And it's an incredible mission field. It's an incredible opportunity. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes we think, well, if I had time, I would. But it's like, no, this is something we need to make time for. Digital discipleship should be a priority, especially for people reaching, Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Yeah, dude. I couldn't agree with you more. You said like so many things in there that I feel like I've been saying, So like the first thing of which is like you spent $10 to get better audio. And so because one of my arguments that I feel like a lot of youth pastors have is like we're not the main room, we're not the main auditorium, so we don't have like the live stream gear, we don't have all that type of stuff. And like, you just made the case, like, you don't have to have all that. Like, you can just put a camera up in the back of the room. Like, one of the strategies that we recommend here on this podcast is like just sitting down, like pre-filming your messages. But if you don't even have the time to do that, like, you can do what David did and just put a camera in the back of the room, capture your audio, and that's even one less like step of extra work. And like you were saying too, like, and it's interesting when you talk about like having a digital library, like that's a fantastic resource for down the road, because you might be counseling a kid, or a kid might come to you with a particular issue and you're like, I've actually like studied that in scripture, and like I have that information and I've packaged it in like a sermon. It just was like 2 months ago, but like you have the YouTube link. Like, let me send that to you, because maybe they weren't there, maybe they weren't coming to your church yet, or maybe they, whatever the reason, right? That, or to your point, they just or don't remember it because our teachings aren't as valuable as we hope and think that they they would be. And there really is so much, like, I agree, so much value in creating like a digital library, far beyond what we can possibly think or imagine, I think. And if you start now, that begins to build and compound on itself. So if let's say you're hearing this in the middle of this summer, and this year you're like, I'm gonna start capturing my messages and posting them on YouTube. By the end of the school year, you'll have a full year library worth of content. So, like David said, just you gotta find the time. Like, it's no longer an option anymore, I don't think. I think you can keep doing it and you probably won't get fired, right? You can keep living life in your very like analog youth pastor way, and with all the irons in the fire, like that is a way to keep doing the job. But I think we, yeah, as youth pastors, can be more effective if we choose to invest and engage and lean into what this digital space has to offer, for sure. David, what, if anything, is there anything that you're like, I would love it if we could get to this spot? Like, these are some of your like goals or dreams for your digital stuff, but you're a youth pastor and you haven't, put legs all the way under it yet, or,
Yeah,
it's a down the road sort of project that you'd like to
certainly.
see.
Certainly. Obviously you want to continue to work to upgrade the quality of the content you're putting out. I would love to lean into more conversational type content for YouTube and podcasts, and even using those on social. We did a series in the month of February. We called it All My Friends, and we sat and took 3 weeks. I interviewed a couple different people. Two of them. One week it was two of our students, two of our graduating seniors, and those videos are our best videos on YouTube, bar none. And did so well, and it's telling those stories.
Yeah, no
and I
doubt.
think people really like that. So content like that, and more student driven content, I think is the place we're going. And for your busy youth pastor, man, lean into your students. Your students are content creators. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are born into a world where they are all creating content. I mean, go watch a 7-year-old kid. I go to the gym, and my gym owner, his daughter, I think she's 7 or 8, and she walks around the gym with a digital camera and makes pictures and videos and edits and stories of her and all her, people at the gym. They are all doing it.
Yeah.
Ask them, lean into them. And that's kind of a space that I would want to grow in, is including and using our students in that ministry as a way to include them in the discipleship process online, and also to tell their stories.
Man, that's so good. And you use Premiere Pro, I use Premiere Pro. So like you may hear a couple of guys on this podcast be like, man, that's like I don't know that, I don't have that, I don't have access to it. Like everything now is so accessible. Like, I did a whole week's worth of camp daily recap videos off of my cell phone with CapCut a year ago. And like Canva, you can use Canva Pro and do tons of stuff on there. And because you're a nonprofit for your church, it's free. Canva for nonprofits is completely free, but they'll give you like the pro version of it. And so like you don't have to have all of these like higher level skills that you used to have. Like, the barrier to entry into this stuff is so much lower. And you're so right. Like, our students absolutely eat this stuff up and probably want us to just get out of the way and let them do it anyway. So we should just figure that out. All we gotta do is put a little infrastructure around it for them.
Yeah, I mean, what better thing could we do than, like, really as student pastors, what better, greater opportunity we have than to empower students to
Yeah.
step into ministry and to
Yeah.
see their life as ministry. They are on social. Just like we would encourage them to see their high school basketball team as a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So we should too encourage them to see their digital life as a ministry,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not that we put it in a compartment, but that all of the things we do are ministry and opportunities to share Jesus. And what better thing could we do than to teach our students that and to include them in that?
Yeah, you're so right on that. Well, David, any other sort of like thoughts or words of encouragement that you would have? Like, you have opportunity here to like talk to some other youth pastors, people in church ministry. Like, you know, what would you, as you look out across the landscape of youth ministry and probably, if you're like me, the lack of digital integration that is existing, like what would be your like final words or just, final encouragement pieces to other youth pastors?
Yeah, I was a great resource for anybody listening. Of course, these resources here. I looked at your Linktree the other day, and I mean, gosh, some incredible resources you've got for student pastors on there, for a digital resource, and also I would encourage people to look into Pro Church Tools. Brady SHEARER, I listen to his podcast every week, and he is giving out, I mean, just free stuff. He did a poll on his Instagram a couple months ago and asked, these are church creatives. These are people like you and me who value church using digital, marketing and digital opportunities to reach people with Jesus. And he asked those churches how many of them, their church has a TikTok page. And of those people, 10% said yes. And you mentioned that group on Facebook of youth pastors only. And I think every time I see someone, and it may have been even in that post that we connected on, ask about TikTok, I see so many comments of, well, TikTok is just, naked people or dancing people or music that we wouldn't want our students to listen to or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, my encouragement would be, don't be afraid to step into new things, as in terms of digital outreach as a student pastor, as a student ministry. When I came to this church, our student ministry was very young. Lots of middle schoolers, fewer high schoolers, and with that, fewer of our students had social media. Like, a lot of our consistent students weren't on Instagram. They weren't on TikTok. Yeah. And I think sometimes we could think, well, our students aren't even there. Why would I even invest into that? But one, there's students in your community who are there. Yeah. And two, we're not affirming everything on something by putting our presence there. There's bad stuff everywhere. All our kids grow up and go to college, and guess what? I tell our kids all the time, hey, when you go to college, if you want to get into something, you can find it there, right? Your parents can only protect you for so long. And that's true in a lot of digital spaces. If you want to find sinful things on the internet, it's not really hard to do, all right? We're all mature and old enough to know that that's true. So our choice is either to be afraid and hide and say, well, if I'm not there, I'm not encouraging anybody to go there. Or we can say, hey, there's lost people there. There's people that are far from God there. And I mean, shoot, the way that TikTok's algorithm prioritizes locality, there are people in your community, students in your community who are there. And even if you would not encourage your students to go create an account there, you can still go reach people there. And we have the greatest message that's ever been told. And we have the greatest means to take that message to the whole world. Why would we be afraid? And that would be my encouragement, man, is hey, don't be afraid. Try stuff. And guess what? I made a post, it was actually on our church page, and it did well on Instagram and did well on YouTube Shorts and flopped on TikTok. I mean, like 7 views like horrible, awful.
Yeah.
And guess what? The sun still came up the next day, and not everything's gonna work. But don't be afraid. Step into digital spaces, because there is an incredible opportunity to minister to students and reach students in those spaces. And so I would just encourage you, don't be afraid. Yes, we have discernment from the Holy Spirit. Yes, there is wisdom. And no, we don't have to say yes to everything. But be wise and be willing to step out and trust that God can take your a message that somebody listening is teaching, maybe to a room of 15 students. And there's something you could say in that, or a guest could say in that, or one of your students could encourage somebody with, and millions of people could be encouraged with the love of Jesus. And I mean, what kind of incredible opportunity is that? And why would we not lean into that in any way we could?
Yeah, you're so right. And, TikTok was just the new one, but everyone else has figured out how to compete with them now. So Facebook, Instagram have Reels, and YouTube has Shorts. And so if you're like, well, my kids aren't on TikTok. Well, if they're on Instagram, you can still make the exact same type of content. If they're on YouTube, you can like I crack up because like I'll have parents who are like, my kids aren't on TikTok, but they're on YouTube. I'm like, then they're watching the same
Same
stuff.
things.
Same stuff. You haven't done anything. They're just on YouTube now. So,
Yep.
it's all that's the thing. Like I work at what I say is one of the most conservative churches. And so we have just as much parents or whatever who might be a little freaked out by some of these things. But YouTube seems to be like the safe one. I'm like, well, we're on YouTube, and like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, because parents watch YouTube, and you can watch it on your TV in your house because there's like an app for it on all your smart TVs and stuff like that. And so, like our executive pastor, his daughter, she doesn't have social media, but they watch all of our like YouTube stuff on their TV in their house, like even the silly stuff that we do, even like the little shorts and the games and stuff that we do on there. And so it's like you said, it lean into it, because if that's where our students are, I think there's a stat from Pew, like 95% of teenagers say that they will use YouTube. So if that's where they are, like, you're right. Why would we not be there? So get there. So get there. Well, man, I appreciate your time. David, where would be like, if people want to see all this stuff, I'll drop some of these things in the show notes. Like, how can they get a hold of you? How can they check out what you're doing on your church's and youth ministry social media? Let us know where they can find you.
Yeah, our church is everywhere. It's Harrodsburg.church. So our student ministry is Harrodsburg.students. That's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You should be able to get to there.
There you go.
My Facebook and Instagram are David Lee Carpenter. There's a lot of David Carpenters out there, so I put my middle name in there. You should be able to find me. And if I can help or encourage anybody along the way, I would love to do that. I'm thankful for you to let me come on, and I hope it helps somebody, bless somebody today.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for being on. Appreciate your time today, and we'll talk next time.
Hey, I feel like it was fine over here as long as you feel like you got what you wanted out of it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I love other youth pastors that aren't afraid of social media. And that, like you said, I don't feel like most of them are afraid of it. I feel like they just don't have time. They just can't organize themselves enough to get it. And so I love how easy, you made it sound. And so I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people who are listening.
And man, it's a priorities thing. I really feel like we have literally an opportunity to take the gospel to the world.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it takes second priority, and we think, well, we're not a mega church. We don't have somebody whose job is social media. We're not elevation. And
Yeah.
it's like, dude, literally, like if you really look at it, the videos that are doing the best on social platforms right now are people who take a phone and talk to it like this,
That's it.
more stripped down than ever.
Yeah.
So, like what you were saying about pre-recording sermons, well, like there was a video I did. We were kicking off a series on love, and
Yeah.
literally, I did a minute summary of my message, talking to the camera like that, just
Yeah.
asking what is love and what does Scripture say love is,
Yep.
and it's super well, um, because it was just raw and it was, something that felt normalized, and it's just a golden opportunity. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And one of the things the resident I was referencing, he started this thing, we meet on Wednesday nights called the social challenge. And so he'd just come up with like a game or something like that, and have students compete and do it. And now it's a staple. Like we do it every single Wednesday night, like at the end of our programming. And we say, hey, if you want to do the social challenge this week, meet us in the back. And we have a little like room set up with it. And so now, like I do a melding of content. So like I do a bunch of serious content, like scripture stuff based off of all of our messages, but I also do like goofy stuff. And
Yeah,
that's where it's really easy to get students involved in it. Like let them get in there and they love it because they get to then see themselves,
yeah,
like later on down the road. And like you said, like they're the creators then of the content. They'll share it, they'll help like get that kind of like word out, so to speak, if they're on it. So it's been clutch because before that, like I'm on a team, so there's like 4 or 5 of us like that are like in youth ministry in our context. And so it was easy enough for like just the 4 or 5 of us to like get together and like film stuff, and that wouldn't take extra time. We could do it during the office hours, all that type of stuff. But man, like once we started getting students on it, like we have so much content that like we haven't even filmed. And my boss was like, are we gonna film anytime soon? I was like, we don't need to. Like the social challenge is like completely taking like our role out of it almost entirely. So it's fantastic.
yeah, and they're gonna share it more when it's them in it. People love seeing themselves, and like I don't say it in any kind of disrespectful way.
No,
Like,
you're right.
and so if people like seeing themselves and they'll share it, we're turning them into, like, we're empowering them to share their church and their church community and the message of Jesus with their friends.
Yeah.
That's that to me is ultimate success as a
Yeah.
student pastor. Is if you don't need me,
Yeah. Why
if
would we not?
they're doing it themselves, great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, anyway, keep up the good work. I appreciate you taking a risk on a stranger.
I
Um,
appreciate you having me, dude. Where do you want me
but
to send
it,
this? Yeah.
you can email it to me if you want.
All right, appreciate
My email is nclayson, CLASON, and then the number 22 at gmail.com.
it. Okay, perfect.
And then just so you know, we just got back from camp and we also had VBS, so like I get it. And so I started getting a jump on scheduling stuff ahead. And so this episode is scheduled to drop, gosh, I think like the first day of August.
Okay.
August 1st. So don't be like, what the crap, where'd it go? Like it's still coming. I just I'm a little bit out in advance. I'm going on vacation next week, so I'm trying to like, not have to work when I'm on that.
Yeah, do
So
that.
August 1st.
Good stuff. Hey, man, I really appreciate it. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know.
Will do. Appreciate it,
All
bro.
right.
Chat
I'll see
later. See ya.
you.